The rain beat against the windows of my old Victorian home, a relentless drumming that matched the pounding in my chest. I sat in the leather armchair, staring at the letter in my trembling hands, the words blurring through tears I refused to let fall. My daughter-in-law, Claire, had done the unthinkable. She'd barred me from seeing my grandchildren, Lily and Ethan, claiming I was too controlling and unstable. Unstable. The word stung like a slap. Me, Eleanor Hargrove, the woman who'd built a real estate empire from nothing, who'd raised my son Daniel to be a man of integrity, who'd funded their lavish lifestyle with a trust fund worth millions. And now, this betrayal. I crumpled the letter, my fingers itching to tear it apart. But I stopped myself. No. I needed to keep it as a reminder, a spark to fuel what was coming. Revenge wasn't a word I'd ever associated with myself. I was the matriarch, the one who held the family together through loss and triumph. But Claire had crossed a line, and something dark stirred within me, a quiet rage that whispered of justice. I stood and paced the study, the hardwood creaking under my steps. The room smelled of old books and the lavender candles I lit to calm my nerves. But nothing could soothe me now. Lily's laughter echoed in my memory, her tiny hands clutching mine as we baked cookies in the kitchen. Ethan's shy smile as he showed me his drawings, his pride radiating like sunlight. They were my heart, my legacy, and Claire had stolen them from me. Daniel, my only son, hadn't even called to explain. His silence was a wound deeper than Claire's cruelty. I stopped at the window, watching the storm rage outside. The world felt as fractured as my family. I'd given them everything: private schools, vacations in Europe, a trust fund to secure their future. And this was my reward. Isolation. Rejection. I turned to the oak desk, where a framed photo of Daniel and the kids sat like a shrine. My fingers traced their faces, and a memory surfaced. Claire's cold smile at Thanksgiving last year, her barbed comments about my meddling. I'd ignored it then, chalking it up to her stress as a young mother. But now I saw it clearly. She'd been plotting this for months, maybe years. She wanted control, to sever me from the family I'd built. Fine, I thought, my jaw tightening. If she wanted to play dirty, I'd show her I could play dirtier. The trust fund papers were locked in my safe, a fortune I'd set aside for Lily and Ethan, managed by Daniel and Claire until they came of age. But I was the trustee. I held the power. And power, I realized, was a weapon I'd never wielded until now. I sank back into the chair, my mind racing. Cutting off the trust fund would devastate them. Daniel's business was struggling. Claire's spending habits were extravagant. Without that money, their perfect life would crumble. The thought sent a thrill through me, sharp and dangerous. But was it justice? Or was it vengeance? The line blurred as I imagined Claire's face when she learned the money was gone. Would she beg? Would Daniel finally call? I shook my head, trying to silence the guilt creeping in. They'd hurt me first. They'd taken my grandchildren, my purpose. I deserved to hit back. The phone rang, shattering the silence. My heart leapt, hoping it was Daniel. But the screen showed my lawyer, Margaret. I answered, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. Eleanor, I got your message about the trust, she said, her tone cautious. Are you sure you want to do this? It's a big step. I closed my eyes, picturing Lily's face, Ethan's drawings. I'm sure, I said, the words cold and final. Margaret hesitated, then agreed to draft the paperwork. As I hung up, a strange calm settled over me. This was only the beginning. Claire thought she could erase me from their lives, but she'd underestimated me. I wasn't just a grandmother. I was Eleanor Hargrove, and I'd make her regret crossing me. The next morning, I drove to the cemetery, the rain now a soft drizzle. I knelt at my husband's grave, the stone cold under my fingers. George, I whispered, what would you do? He'd been the gentle one, the one who'd balanced my fire with his calm. But he was gone, and I was alone, facing a war I didn't want but couldn't avoid. I stood, brushing dirt from my knees, and made a decision. I confront Claire face to face. No letters, no lawyers, just us. I needed to see her eyes when I told her the trust was gone. I needed to know if she'd fight or crumble. I drove to their house, a sprawling estate I'd helped them buy. The driveway was empty, but I rang the bell anyway, my heart pounding. No answer. I peered through the window, seeing toys scattered on the living room floor. Lily's doll, Ethan's crayons. My chest tightened. Were they even here? Had Claire taken them somewhere to keep them from me? I banged on the door, my knocks echoing. Claire. I called, my voice raw. Open the door. Silence. I turned to leave, but a neighbor's voice stopped me. They're at the park, she said, eyeing me warily. Claire's been upset. Good, I thought, a grim satisfaction rising. Let her be upset. She had no idea what was coming. At the park, I spotted them instantly. Lily's red coat, Ethan's floppy hat. Claire sat on a bench, her face pale, her eyes fixed on her phone. I approached, my steps deliberate, my anger a living thing. Claire, I said, and she flinched, looking up. Her eyes widened, but she didn't speak. We need to talk, I said, my voice low. Dangerous. She stood, clutching her phone like a shield. There's nothing to say, Eleanor. You're not welcome here. Her words were a knife, but I smiled, cold and sharp. Oh, Claire, I said, stepping closer. You're going to wish you hadn't said that. Claire's face drained of color, her lips parting as if to speak. But no words came. The park was alive with the sounds of children laughing, swings creaking. But between us, there was only silence, thick with tension. I could feel Lily and Ethan's presence nearby, their voices calling to each other as they played, oblivious to the storm brewing between their mother and me. I wanted to run to them, to scoop them into my arms. But Claire's stance rigid, defensive, kept me rooted. What do you want, Eleanor? She finally said, her voice tight, her eyes darting to the kids as if to ensure they were still there. I want my family back, I said, each word deliberate, heavy with the weight of my pain. You don't get to decide who I am to them. She laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that cut through the autumn air. You think you can just show up and demand that? You've been controlling us for years, Eleanor. The money, the house, the rules. I'm done. Her words hit like a punch. But I didn't flinch. I spent decades building a life for my family, sacrificing sleep, time, my own dreams, to give them stability. And now she stood here, accusing me of control. I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a whisper. You're done. Good. Because so am I. The trust fund is gone. I'm pulling it. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I saw fear raw, unguarded. You can't do that, she said, but her voice wavered. It's for the kids. I smiled, a cold, calculated smile I barely recognized. I'm the trustee, Claire. I can do whatever I want. And you've just given me every reason to. She stumbled back, her hand gripping the bench for support. I expected her to beg, to plead, but instead, her face hardened. You're a monster, she hissed. You'd hurt your own grandchildren to get back at me. The accusation stung, but I pushed it down. This wasn't about hurting Lily and Ethan, it was about justice. She'd taken them from me. I was taking something from her. An eye for an eye. You started this, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos in my heart. You want to play games with family? I'll play. She stared at me, her eyes blazing with something I couldn't name: anger, fear, maybe both. Then she turned, calling to the kids, her voice sharp. Lily, Ethan, we're leaving. They ran to her, confused, and my heart ached as they glanced at me, their small faces unsure. I wanted to call out, to tell them I loved them, but Claire's grip on their hands was tight, and they were gone before I could speak. I stood there, the park blurring around me, my breath coming in short, ragged bursts. Had I gone too far? The thought gnawed at me, but I pushed it away. Claire had drawn the battle lines, and I wasn't backing down. I drove home, the radio off, the silence heavy with my thoughts. When I walked into the house, the emptiness hit me like a wave. No laughter, no small footsteps, just me and the ghosts of what used to be. I poured a glass of wine, my hands shaking, and sat at the kitchen table. The trust fund documents were still in the safe, but Margaret had already started the process. By tomorrow, it would be official. Claire and Daniel would lose everything. The phone rang again, and this time, it was Daniel. My heart leapt, then sank. His voice was low, strained. Mom, what's going on? Claire said you're cutting off the trust. I closed my eyes, picturing his face, his father's eyes, my stubborn jaw. She didn't tell you why, did she? I said, my voice calm but sharp. She's keeping me from Lily and Ethan. She's tearing this family apart. There was a long pause, and I could hear his breathing, uneven, conflicted. She's just trying to protect them, he said finally, but there was no conviction in his words. Protect them from what? Daniel. Me. Their grandmother. My voice broke, and I hated it. I didn't want him to hear my pain, only my resolve. Mom, please, don't do this. We need that money. His plea was desperate, and for a moment, I wavered. But then I remembered Claire's cold smile. Her letter. Her power play. You made your choice, I said. You let her do this. Now live with it. I hung up before he could respond, my hands trembling. That night, couldn't sleep. The house felt too big, too quiet. I wandered into the guest room, where Lily and Ethan used to stay. Their toys were still their stuffed bear, a stack of coloring books. I picked up the bear, holding it to my chest, and the tears I'd held back finally came. What was I doing? Was this really about justice? Or was I becoming the monster Claire accused me of being? I thought of George, his gentle voice telling me to find another way. But there was no other way. Claire had declared war, and I was fighting to survive. The next day, Margaret called to confirm the trust was frozen. It's done, she said. They'll be notified today. I thanked her, my voice hollow. I should have felt triumphant, but all I felt was a creeping dread. What would Claire do now? Would she fight back? Escalate? I poured another glass of wine, staring at the photo of Daniel and the kids. I wanted to hurt Claire, but now I saw Daniel's face in my mind. His desperation, his betrayal. Had I punished him too? The thought twisted in my gut, but it was too late to turn back. The game was in motion, and I had to see it through. The notification arrived at Claire and Daniel's house that afternoon. A formal letter from Margaret's office. Cold and final. I imagined Claire's hands shaking as she read it, her world unraveling with each word. I didn't have to imagine for long. By evening, my phone buzzed with a text from her. You've gone too far. Eleanor. You'll regret this. No apologies. No please, just a threat. Sharp and venomous. I stared at the words, my pulse quickening. Regret. She was the one who'd regret underestimating me. But beneath my defiance, a flicker of unease stirred. Claire wasn't the type to back down. She was cunning, calculating, and now I'd cornered her. What would she do next? I spent the day in the garden, trying to distract myself. The roses needed pruning, their thorns a fitting metaphor for my life, beautiful but painful. As I clipped away, my mind replayed every moment of the past week. Claire's letter, Daniel's silence, the trust fund's dissolution. I'd acted out of anger, but also out of love for Lily and Ethan, for the family I'd fought to protect. Yet the more I thought about it, the more I wondered if I'd miscalculated. Claire wasn't just fighting for control. She was fighting for her survival. The trust fund had been her safety net, her leverage. Without it, she was desperate, and desperate people were dangerous. That evening, I heard a car pull into the driveway. My heart leapt, hoping it was Daniel. But when I opened the door, Claire stood there, her face a mask of fury. "How dare you?" she said, her voice low, trembling with rage. "You think you can destroy us and walk away?" I stood my ground, though my stomach twisted. "You destroyed us first," I said. "You took my grandchildren." She stepped closer, her eyes blazing. "You're not their mother, Eleanor. You don't get to dictate their lives." Her words were a blade, but I didn't flinch. "And you don't get to dictate mine," I shot back. "You wanted a war, Claire. You got one." She laughed. a chilling sound that sent a shiver down my spine. You think this is a war? You have no idea what I'm capable of. Before I could respond, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking on the pavement. I closed the door, my hands shaking, and leaned against it, trying to steady my breathing. What did she mean? Was she bluffing? Or was something worse coming? I poured a glass of water, my throat dry, and sat at the kitchen table, replaying her words. For the first time, I felt a prickle of fear. I'd unleashed something I couldn't control. The next morning, I woke to an email from an unknown address. The subject line was simple: look closer. My heart sank as I opened it. Attached was a grainy photo of me at the park, confronting Claire. My face was clear, my expression hard, almost unrecognizable. Below it, a message: you're not as untouchable as you think. No signature, no name. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Was this Claire? Someone else? I called Margaret, my voice unsteady. Someone's watching me, I said, forwarding the email. She promised to look into it, but her tone was worried. Be careful, Eleanor, she said. This could get ugly. I spent the day on edge, jumping at every sound. The house, once my sanctuary, felt like a trap. I checked the locks, the windows, my paranoia growing with each passing hour. By afternoon, I couldn't stand it anymore. I drove to Daniel's office, needing answers. He was there, hunched over his desk, looking older than his 40 years. Mom, he said, startled, as I walked in. What are you doing here? I didn't waste time. Did Claire send me this? I showed him the email on my phone. His face paled as he read it, but he shook his head. I don't know, he said, his voice hollow. She's not herself lately. I sat across from him, searching his face for the boy I'd raised. Why didn't you stop her? Daniel, why didn't you fight for me? He looked away, his jaw tight. It's complicated, Mom. She thinks you're trying to take over, to replace her. I laughed, bitter and sharp. Replace her. I'm their grandmother, not their mother. But she's made it clear I'm nothing to them now. He flinched, and for a moment, I saw guilt in his eyes. I didn't want this, he said softly. I didn't know how to fix it. His words softened me, but only for a moment. Then help me now, I said. Tell me what she's planning. He shook his head, defeated. I don't know, Mom. But she's angry. Really angry. I left his office feeling more lost than ever. The drive home was a blur, my mind tangled with fear and regret. I'd wanted justice, but now I was caught in a game I didn't fully understand. Claire wasn't just fighting back, she was escalating, and I was in her crosshairs. That night, I sat in my study, the photo of Daniel and the kids staring back at me. I thought cutting the trust fund would be my victory, but it felt like a trap I'd set for myself. I needed a plan, a way to protect myself and get my grandchildren back. But first, I needed to know what Claire was capable of and how far she'd go to win. The days that followed were a haze of suspicion and dread. Every creak of the house, Every shadow in the yard made my heart race. The anonymous email haunted me. Its grainy photo a constant reminder that someone was watching. I hired a private investigator. A gruff man named Tom who'd come recommended by Margaret. He sat across from me in the study. His notepad open. His eyes sharp. "Could be Claire," he said, studying the email. "Could be someone she hired. Either way, you've stirred up a hornet's nest." I nodded, my throat tight. "Can you find out who sent it?" He gave me a grim smile. "I'll try. But you need to watch your back, Eleanor. People don't take kindly to losing millions." Tom's words echoed as I went about my days, trying to reclaim some normalcy. I tended the garden, answered emails, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept my phone close, hoping for a call from Daniel, a sign he'd come to his senses. But he was silent, and Claire's threat, "You'll regret this," hung over me like a storm cloud. I started noticing things. A car parked too long across the street. A figure lingering near the mailbox. Paranoia. Maybe. But I couldn't shake the feeling I was being hunted. One night, I found a note slipped under my door. No words. Just a single sentence scrawled in red ink. "You can't hide." My hands shook as I called Tom, who promised to dust it for prints. "Stay calm," he said, but his voice was tense. "This is personal." I stopped sleeping. My nights spent pacing. My days fueled by coffee and fear. I wanted to confront Claire again, but Tom advised against it. "She's baiting you," he said. "Let me dig first." So I waited, trapped in my own home, my anger giving way to a gnawing guilt. Had I pushed too far? The trust fund was meant to hurt Claire, not Lily and Ethan. But without it, their future college, security was at risk. I thought of George, his voice in my head urging me to find another way. But what way? Claire had made it clear, I was the enemy. Then Tom called with news. The email came from a burner account. He said, "Hard to trace, but I found something else. Claire's been meeting with a lawyer, not Margaret. Someone known for playing dirty." My stomach dropped. "What kind of lawyer?" I asked. "The kind who digs up dirt," Tom said. "She's looking for leverage, Eleanor. Something to use against you." I thanked him and hung up, my mind spinning. Leverage. What could she possibly have on me? I'd lived a clean life, built my business honestly, loved my family fiercely. But Claire was desperate, and desperation bred creativity. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I drove to the library, where I knew Claire sometimes took the kids for story time. I stayed in the car, watching from a distance. There they were, Lily with her pigtails, Ethan clutching a book. My heart ached, but I forced myself to focus. Claire was there, talking to a man in a suit, her gestures animated, urgent. The lawyer, I thought. I snapped a photo with my phone, my hands unsteady. When I got home, I sent it to Tom. "That's him," he confirmed. "Richard Vance. He's bad news." I asked what he meant, but Tom was vague. "Just stay away from him, Eleanor. He's not above breaking laws." The warning only fueled my resolve. I wasn't going to sit back and let Claire destroy me. I started digging into my own past, looking for anything she could use, old business deals, tax records, anything. I found nothing incriminating, but the process left me rattled. What if she fabricated something? What if she turned Daniel against me completely? I called him, my voice shaking. Daniel, please, tell me what's going on. What's Claire planning? He sighed, his voice heavy. I don't know, Mom. She's different now. Angry. Scared. She thinks you're trying to ruin us. I gripped the phone tighter. I'm trying to save us, I said. Help me, Daniel. For the kids. He was silent for so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, softly, I'll try. His words gave me hope. Fragile but real. I spent the next day with Margaret, going over the trust fund details. There's a way to reinstate it, she said. But it would take time, and you'd need to prove it's in the kids' best interest. I nodded, my mind racing. Maybe that was the way out, restore the trust. But on my terms. I could demand access to Lily and Ethan. Make it legally binding. But would Claire agree? Or would she see it as another attack? I was still mulling it over when Tom called again. Eleanor, you need to see this, he said, his voice urgent. He sent me a filia dossier on me, compiled by Vance. It included photos, financial records, even notes about my daily routine. My blood ran cold. Claire wasn't just fighting back. She was building a case to destroy me. The dossier was a violation. A catalog of my life laid bare, bank statements, property deeds, even a record of my visits to George's grave. How had Claire gotten this? I sat in my study, the pages spread across the desk, my hands trembling with rage and fear. Tom's voice on the phone was grim. Vance is thorough, he said. He's digging for anything to discredit you, lawsuits, scandals, anything to paint you as unfit. Unfit. The word echoed Claire's accusation. Unstable. I wanted to scream, to tear the papers apart. But I forced myself to stay calm. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about power, control, and something darker, Claire's need to erase me entirely. I called Daniel, my voice shaking with urgency. Did you know about this? The dossier. The lawyer. He was silent for too long, and my heart sank. Mom, I didn't know the details, he said finally. Claire said she needed to protect the kids. That you were a threat. A threat. To my own grandchildren. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. Daniel, she's trying to destroy me. And you're letting her. His voice cracked. I don't know what to do, Mom. I'm stuck in the middle. I wanted to shake him, to make him see the truth. But his words stopped me. Stuck. He was torn, caught between his wife and his mother. For the first time, I felt a pang of sympathy for him. But sympathy wouldn't win this fight. I met with Margaret the next day, the dossier tucked under my arm. Can she use this against me? I asked, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my chest. Margaret scanned the pages, her brow furrowing. It's invasive, but there's nothing illegal here yet, she said. If she tries to use this in court, we can counter it. But Eleanor, this is a warning. She's not stopping. I nodded, my mind racing. Court. The word sent a chill through me. Was Claire planning to sue me? To take this public? I couldn't let it get that far. I needed to act. To regain control. That night, I sat down and wrote a letter not to Claire, but to Daniel. I poured out everything, my love for him, my pain at his silence, my fear for Lily and Ethan's future. I told him about the dossier, about Claire's lawyer, about the threat I felt closing in. You're my son, I wrote, and I need you to choose. Not me, not Claire, but the kids. Help me protect them. I mailed it the next morning, my heart heavy with hope and dread. Would he read it? Would it change anything? I didn't know, but I had to try. Days passed with no response. The silence was deafening, broken only by another anonymous note. You're running out of time. This one was taped to my mailbox, the red ink stark against the white paper. I called Tom, who was already tracing Vance's movements. He's meeting with someone new, Tom said. Not sure who yet, but it's not good. I felt the walls closing in. My home no longer a refuge but a battlefield. I stopped going out, afraid of being followed, photographed, exposed. My world shrank to the four walls of my house, my thoughts consumed by Claire's next move. Then, a breakthrough. Tom called with a lead. Vance is working with a private investigator of his own, he said. They're trying to link you to a shady deal from your early real estate days. I frowned, confused. There was no shady deal, I said. I built my business clean. Tom sighed. Doesn't matter. They're fabricating something, forged documents. Maybe. Enough to make you look bad in court. Court again. The word was a drumbeat in my mind. I thanked Tom and hung up, my resolve hardening. If Claire wanted to play dirty, I play smarter. I called Margaret and laid out a plan. I want to reinstate the trust, I said, but with conditions. Access to Lily and Ethan, legally guaranteed. And I want it ironclad. Margaret hesitated. That's a big ask, Eleanor. Claire will fight it. I smiled, a grim determination settling over me. Let her try. I spent the next day drafting terms with Margaret, each clause a shield against Claire's attacks. The trust would be restored, but only if I got visitation rights, co-decision-making power for the kids' education, and a say in their future. It was a gamble, but I was done being the victim. That evening, Daniel called. His voice was soft, hesitant. I got your letter, he said. I didn't know it was this bad. My heart leapt, but I stayed cautious. What are you going to do about it? I asked. He sighed, the sound heavy with exhaustion. I'm talking to Claire tonight. I'll try to get her to back off. Try. The word wasn't enough, but it was a start. Daniel, I said, my voice firm but gentle. This is about the kids, not us. Do it for them. He promised he would, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. But hope, I knew, was a dangerous thing. Claire wasn't done, and neither was I. Daniel's promise lingered in my mind, a fragile thread of hope I clung to despite my doubts. I wanted to believe he'd stand up to Claire, that he'd fight for our family. But years of watching him defer to her made me wary. I spent the morning in the garden, the repetitive task of weeding grounding me. If only for a moment. The air was crisp, the scent of damp earth calming. But my thoughts were a storm. What if Daniel failed? What if Claire's lawyer found something real or fabricated to ruin me? The dossier was a warning, a glimpse of her ruthlessness. I couldn't underestimate her again. By noon, Tom called with an update. Vance is pushing the narrative of financial misconduct. He said, "They're claiming you manipulated property values in the 90s to dodge taxes." I laughed. A bitter sound. That's absurd. My books were audited every year. Tom's voice was grim. Doesn't matter. They're building a case for court. Something to drag your name through the mud. I thanked him, my mind racing. Court meant publicity, scandal, a stain on my legacy. Worse, it meant dragging Lily and Ethan into a public fight. I couldn't let that happen. I called Margaret, my voice steady despite the panic rising in my chest. We need to move faster on the trust reinstatement, I said. And I want a restraining order against Vance. Margaret hesitated. A restraining order is tricky without proof of direct threat, she said. But I'll file a cease and desist to slow him down. I nodded, grateful for her calm competence. And Daniel? She asked. Any progress? I sighed, rubbing my temples. He says he's trying. I don't know if I believe him. Margaret's voice softened. Give him time, Eleanor. He's still your son. Her words stung. A reminder of the bond one was fighting to save, even as I waged war against his wife. That evening, I found another note. This one tucked into my car's windshield wiper. Stop now, or it gets worse. My heart pounded as I scanned the street. But it was empty, the dusk casting long shadows. I called Tom, who promised to increase surveillance around my house. This is escalation, he said. Stay vigilant. Vigilant. The word felt like a cage. I was a prisoner in my own life, haunted by Claire's invisible hand. I sat in the kitchen, the note in front of me, and poured a glass of wine. My hands shook, but not from fear, from anger. She thought she could intimidate me. She'd learn who she was dealing with. The next day, I drove to the park again, hoping to catch a glimpse of Lily and Ethan. They were there, playing on the swings, their laughter a balm to my frayed nerves. Claire was on her phone, oblivious to me. I stayed in the car, my heart aching as I watched them. I wanted to run to them, to tell them I loved them, but I couldn't risk another confrontation. Not yet. Instead, I took photos, evidence of their happiness, proof they were still mine in some small way. When I got home, I printed them, taping them to the fridge next to Daniel's old drawings. Family. Fractured but not lost. Then Daniel called, his voice urgent. Mom. I talked to Claire. She's not backing down. But I found something. My pulse quickened. What? I asked. He hesitated, then said, she's been hiding money. Offshore accounts. I found statements in her desk. My mind reeled. Offshore accounts. Was this her backup plan? Her way to survive without the trust? Send them to me, I said, my voice sharp. And Daniel didn't tell her, you know. He agreed. And within an hour, the documents were in my inbox. Pages of transactions. Numbers that didn't add up. Claire had been siphoning money for years, long before I'd cut the trust. I called Tom, forwarding the documents. This is it, I said. This is how we stop her. He whistled, scanning the files. If this is real, this fraud, we can use it to discredit her, maybe even press charges. The thought of Claire in court, exposed, sent a thrill through me. But it also terrified me. What would this do to Daniel? To the kids? I pushed the thought aside. Justice first, then redemption. I spent the night with Margaret, crafting a strategy. We'd confront Claire with the evidence, demand she drop her campaign against me, and restore my access to the kids. If she refused, we'd go to the police. The next morning, I felt a strange calm. The game was shifting in my favor. I drove to Claire's house, the documents in a folder, my resolve steel. She answered the door, her face pale, her eyes wary. What now, Eleanor? She asked, her voice cold. I held up the folder, my smile sharp. We need to talk, Claire, about your accounts, and how far you're willing to go to keep them secret. Her expression faltered, just for a moment, but it was enough. I'd found her weakness, and I wasn't letting go. Claire's eyes darted to the folder in my hand, her composure cracking like thin ice. She stepped back, letting me into the house, her movements stiff. The living room was a mess, toys scattered, dishes unwashed, a stark contrast to the pristine image she usually projected. I sat on the couch, the folder on my lap, and waited. She stood across from me, arms crossed, her silence heavy with dread. What do you want, Eleanor? She asked finally, her voice low, almost a whisper. I opened the folder, spreading the bank statements across the coffee table. These, I said, tapping the papers. Offshore accounts. Hidden money. Fraud. Care to explain? Her face went white, her hands clenching into fists. Where did you get those? She demanded, but her voice shook. I leaned forward, my gaze steady. Does it matter? What matters is what I do with them. The police would be very interested, don't you think? She sank into a chair, her eyes fixed on the documents, her breathing uneven. For the first time, I saw her not as my enemy, but as a woman unraveling, caught in her own web. You wouldn't, she said, but there was no conviction in her words. I smiled, cold and sharp. Try me, Claire. You took my grandchildren. I'm taking your freedom. She stared at me, her eyes glittering with tears she refused to shed. This isn't about the kids, she said. It's about you and me. You've always hated me, Eleanor. From the moment Daniel brought me home. Her words hit like a slap, and for a moment, I faltered. Had I hated her? I disapproved of her spending, her attitude, but hate. I pushed the thought aside. This isn't personal. I lied. It's about what's right. You can't keep me from Lily and Ethan. She laughed. A hollow sound. Right? You cut off their future because you're too proud to back down. Her words stung. But I didn't flinch. You started this, I said. Now end it. Let me see them. Or these go to the authorities. Claire stood, pacing the room, her hands twisting together. You don't understand, she said, her voice breaking. I did it for them. For Daniel. His business was failing, and we needed the money. I frowned, confused. What are you talking about? She stopped, her eyes meeting mine, raw and desperate. The accounts. They weren't for me. They were for Daniel's debts. He didn't want you to know he'd failed. My heart stopped. Daniel. My son. Hiding debts. Lying to me. I gripped the folder, my mind reeling. You're lying, I said, but my voice wavered. She shook her head. Ask him. He'll tell you. I left the house in a daze, the folder clutched to my chest. I drove to Daniel's office, my thoughts a tangle of betrayal and doubt. He was there, looking exhausted, his desk cluttered with papers. Mom, he said, startled. I didn't sit, didn't soften. Is it true? I asked, holding up the folder. The debts. The accounts. His face crumpled, and he nodded, his eyes on the floor. I didn't want you to know, he said. I was ashamed. The confession hit like a tidal wave, washing away my anger, leaving only pain. My son, my pride, had been lying to me, and Claire had covered for him. I sat across from him, my voice soft but firm. Why didn't you tell me? He rubbed his face, his eyes red. You always saw me as perfect. Mom. Couldn't let you down. His words broke something in me, a wall I'd built around my heart. I'd pushed him to be strong, to be like me, but in doing so, I'd made him afraid to fail. Daniel, I said, my voice trembling. You're my son. I'd love you no matter what. He looked at me, tears in his eyes, and for the first time in months, I saw hope. I drove home, my mind a whirlwind. Claire's actions, her secrecy, suddenly made sense. She wasn't just protecting herself, she was protecting Daniel, their family. But she'd still hurt me, still taken my grandchildren. Could I forgive her? Could I stop this war before it destroyed us all? I called Margaret, my voice steady. Hold off on the police, I said. I need time to think. She agreed, but her tone was cautious. Be careful, Eleanor. This isn't over. That night, I sat in the study, the dossier and bank statements spread before me. I thought of George, his gentle wisdom, his belief in second chances. I'd wanted revenge, but now I saw the cost me son's shame, my grandchildren's future, my own soul. I picked up the phone and called Daniel. We need to fix this, I said. Together. He agreed, his voice heavy with relief. For the first time, I felt the weight of my anger lift, replaced by a fragile hope for redemption. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. Revenge had fueled me, but it was a fire that consumed everything me family. My peace. My soul. I needed to end this. Not with more destruction, but with healing. I called Daniel and asked him to bring Claire and the kids to the house. No lawyers. No threats. I said. Just us. He hesitated, then agreed, his voice tentative but hopeful. I spent the day preparing, baking Lily's favorite cookies, setting out Ethan's crayons. The house smelled of sugar and warmth, a stark contrast to the Cold War that had defined us. They arrived in the afternoon, the kids running to me with squeals of joy. I hugged them tightly, tears stinging my eyes as Lily babbled about school and Ethan showed me a new drawing. Claire and Daniel stood in the doorway, their faces guarded. I invited them in, my voice steady despite the nerves twisting in my gut. We sat in the living room, the kids playing nearby, their laughter a fragile bridge between us. I want to end this, I said, looking at Claire. No more fighting. No more threats. She crossed her arms, her eyes wary. What's the catch? She asked. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. No catch. I'm reinstating the trust fund for Lily and Ethan. But I want to be part of their lives. Legally. Fairly. Claire's face softened. Just slightly. But she didn't speak. Daniel looked at her. Then at me. Mom. I'm sorry. He said, his voice breaking. I should have stopped this sooner. I nodded, my throat tight. We all made mistakes, I said. But we're family. We fix this together. Claire's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something other than anger, regret. Maybe, or fear. I thought you wanted to control us, she said softly. I thought you'd take them from me. Her confession stunned me. All this time, she'd been afraid of losing her children, just as I had. I reached for her hand, surprising us both. Claire, I'd never take them from you. I just want to love them. She pulled back, but her eyes were wet. I didn't know how to trust you, she said. I still don't. Her honesty hurt, but it was a start. We talked for hours, laying bare our fears, our mistakes. Daniel admitted his shame about the debts. Claire her desperation to protect him. I admitted my pride, my need to control. It wasn't easy, but it was honest. By the time they left, we'd agreed to mediation, to a legal agreement ensuring my time with the kids. The trust fund would be restored, with clear terms to protect us all. The weeks that followed were tentative, fragile. I saw Lily and Ethan every weekend, their laughter filling the house again. Claire and I were cautious, but we were trying. Daniel started opening up, sharing his struggles, letting me help. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One evening, as I tucked the kids into bed, Lily hugged me tightly. I missed you, Grandma, she said. I kissed her forehead, my heart full. I missed you too, sweetheart. I sat in the study that night, the dossier and notes gone, burned in a moment of catharsis. I thought of George, his belief in redemption, in family. I'd almost lost that, consumed by anger and pride. But I'd found my way back, not through revenge, but through forgiveness, mine and theirs. The war was over, and though the scars remained, we were healing. I looked at the photo of Daniel and the kids, my fingers tracing their faces. We weren't perfect, but we were together, and that was enough.